We've got another stop on the trail to the first Saturday in May on Sunday afternoon, the Sham Stakes at Santa Anita Park. It's going to go as race number 8 at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Nick Tammaro here to take a look at the Sham, joined by Scott Shapiro. Scott, you've been active along the trail already, and you're ready to keep it going with a stop out west.
I sure am. I could use the warm weather, so we'll stop out in Arcadia for a quick Sunday. As it looks, not surprisingly, Nick, I think we've had this topic before that not only does Bob Baffert hold a strong hand this year, but he's held a strong hand in the Sham in the past. He's won it 3 years in a row. 4 of the last 5, 8 overall. Last year was New Grange, just an okay horse. But prior to that, Life is Good, 2021, Authentic 2022, 2020. So there have been some really, really talented horses that have won this race over the years.
Yeah, hard to believe that it's already been 3 years since Authentic won the Sham, of course, en route to an eventual Kentucky Derby win. It didn't take place on the first Saturday in May, but instead the first Saturday in September. We've also seen Baffert be in this position recently, though. He did hold a really strong hand in the Los Alamitos Futurity, and his horses got beaten there. So I think it's foolish to just serve the race up to him, though he does hold a pretty strong hand here.
He sure does. And I would think National Treasure would be the one that would take the most support coming off that third place effort in the Breeders' Cup Juveniles. Really done very little wrong other than losing to Cave Rock and Forte. Of course, he has Newgate as well, Speedboat Beach, and Reincarnate, a little bit more of outsiders. But yeah, he's got 2/3 of the field.
Yeah, one of the things that's always hard to figure, and National Treasure is a good place to start, especially because based on his debut, you kind of feel like this might be a need to lead horse, right? I know he chased a pretty strong pace last time out in the juvenile, but he didn't really willingly pass anybody, and he looks like a horse that might just be better dictating terms to everybody else. But you juxtapose him against his stablemates, and it looks as if there could really be a bit of a scramble just amongst them. Where do you see the Baffert horses specifically kind of sorting themselves out in the opening couple of furlongs?
You make a good point. You could definitely make excuses for National Treasure, especially in the juvenile when he was marooned to the outside, didn't get out of the gates well, and really cost him any chance. He might just not be as good as Forte and Cave Rock. Hasn't really shown the willingness to pass, like you said, but I would think Speedboat Beach, a horse that's got sprinter type speed, at least shown it on the grass thus far, would be a horse that would be prominent early. Spun Intended hasn't gotten out of the gates well, be on the outside with Mark Glatt with Mike Smith. Would presume they're not going to let Baffert horses walk on the lead. But like you said, it is pretty difficult to sort out. National Treasure, though, you would think would be involved at least to an extent early on.
You would imagine so. I do think Speedboat Beach is a little interesting here, given that he did effectively go the mile last time out, albeit on turf. You know, he didn't finish like a horse who was really dying for more ground, but I do think it's interesting that he was considered a probable for the Eddie Logan last week, and Baffert opted to not enter him there and run him instead here. You'd have to think that has to do with that, with his recent training, including that fast workout back on December 23rd. Do you hold out any hope that this horse could end up being a real graded state caliber dirt horse?
Maybe. It's a good question. I think he probably went to the turf for that second and third start because of how many horses Baffert has to run on the dirt. Maybe Bob didn't think he was as good as some of his other ones, but that's a great point you make. Easily could have gone in the Eddie Logan. Instead, he opts to send him against his stablemates here. Flavian Pratt has ridden him in the past, so maybe not too newsworthy that he rides him back here, but obviously one of the best jocks around. I had some interest in Newgate, Nick, as an outsider, or not really an outsider, but maybe taking on National Treasure, who I expect to take the most money. I know Newgate hasn't won since his debut effort at 5.5 furlongs, but I can make some excuses for him. The Bob Hope, he was 4 wide. He was going 7 furlongs, and I still think maybe this horse is best served going 2 turns. The Breeders' Futurity battled early with a couple of good horses, tired a little bit in the lane, but maybe Frankie Dettori can find a way to relax this horse a little better along the inside and make a bit of a run, because I do think, like I just said, that he probably is a 2-turn horse in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think he wants every bit of the route. I also thought he got the worst of it in the Breeders' Futurity, as you alluded to, chasing that exceptionally strong pace. I mean, the horse who probably got the worst of it was Loggins, but he, of the other chasers early, so to speak, I think he did kind of take it the hardest. He is at least a horse who's passed a horse before once, and it goes all the way back to his debut, but maybe that under Frankie Dettori's hands, he can relax a little bit on the inside, provided there's no disadvantage to being there. We've touched on all the Bafferts. You mentioned Spun Intended. This is a really interesting horse to me, Scott. He's by hard spun, but the bottom side is a real route influence. Floridora won the Busanda as a 3-year-old, a newly turned 3-year-old filly and was really every bit of a router. This horse looks like one that wants more ground, and he probably made out very well at the post draw.
I think so. Mike Smith should have some options. Obviously, never being on the far outside in a large field wouldn't be ideal going 2 turns. But in this compact group, it will give the Hall of Famers some options out of the gate. Hasn't gotten out of the gate well in either of his first 2 starts. The first one, it cost him getting out of the gate slow. Last time out, was able to overcome it and won under complete wraps. Looking forward to seeing what he has in him, taking on winners for the first time and trying 2 turns. Like you said, the pedigree suggests that shouldn't be an issue. But this is a lot to chew in that first start against winners.
Yeah, some positive signs from his maiden win last time out. Harlow Cap, who was the runner-up, came back and finished a good second at Santa Anita on Monday, improved his speed figure in doing so. One of the also-rans, Johannes, came back and broke his maiden, albeit on the turf, but he was a horse who had shown some speed in there as well. So I do think there's reason to believe that there's probably some more and a lot of upside with Spun Intended. The final horse we'll touch on is the final horse in the field that we've not mentioned. You mentioned briefly in Paxa Wallop. Like Speedboat Beach, this is a horse who's coming in off of turf form. The problem is, unlike Speedboat Beach, his dirt race wasn't particularly good.
No, it wasn't. It was on debut against. I was over the slop going 1 turn at Gulfstream, and he did run well in the turf races in Southern California before failing as one of the American hopes in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. But just really hasn't run fast enough to be competitive here. Maybe Ramon Vasquez can figure out a way to work out a trip, and if, like they said, or like you said, it's a contentious early pace, can pass some tiring rivals. But he does appear up against it here. Although I do understand why trainer Jeff Mullins would take a shot.
Yeah, great time of year to take a chance to see if the horse can dirt a little bit with all of the major turf objectives a little bit down the line. Well, that's a 6 of them in the Sham. Looks like a showdown between some of the Bafferts and Spun Intended.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I know it's a compact group, might not be a tremendous betting race if you're on National Treasure. I'm going to take a little bit of a shot with Newgate in here. And yeah, the leaderboard competition continues on this weekend with, of course, the Jerome. I know there's another preview out there on TwinSpires with our colleagues Darren Zocali and James Scully. And then it'll continue on Sunday in Southern California.
We're headlong towards that first Saturday in May. And again, play along with us at TwinSpires.com. This is the Sham, which will be Sunday afternoon at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Scott, thanks so much. I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon.
Best of luck this weekend, Nick.
For Scott Shapiro, Nick Tammaro here. Until next time, best of luck.